So let's answer this question. Do the methods of eliciting responses maximize student involvement? What's your answer? What do you think about that? Well, if you're using a hand signal, you might use one of these, right? So it's sort of like there's some good and there's some ways in which it could be, there could be more. So you might already be thinking of some different ways that she might further maximize student involvement. Let's talk about what she did. So what kind of responses did she elicit from students almost all of the time? And probably in your head right now you're thinking, or you said out loud if you are by yourself and no one is watching you do this, you probably said that she's using individual student responses, right? Even though she only has 3 students, she's still using individual responses. And in a small group like that, it might be appropriate because students are getting a chance, every 3rd student, to actually be engaged in the content. So in that way, it might not be so bad to use individual student responses. You also notice she's asking lots of remembering questions, and so it's happening really frequently, so that's less time involved. So in terms of that quadrant, she's not engaging all students at the same time, but it doesn't take long for each question, and she does engage all of the students as she goes, and you can see she does it at a rapid pace. So that's what's great about that. Now we think about what we could do to change it and improve it. There are some places where she could have, for example, done a choral response. So it was interesting toward the very end of the lesson. You may have caught this. You may want to watch the video again if you didn't catch it. She had a moment where she sort of tried to get students to respond chorally. She sort of paused and she asked, sort of like expected students to say something. That didn't happen. One kid said it because she hadn't set up the expectation of a choral response, but that was what she was intending. And that could have worked here in this very small group for all of the students to be engaged in that way. Another thing she could have done was to use some sort of physical response, point to this point on the line graph and so on. You could see the first student was confused about the temperature because I think he wasn't quite sure where to look. I don't have a copy of this in front of me. But I think that if she had had students give a physical response of pointing to the graph, she might have avoided that difficulty. There was another possibility that she might have done a quick turn and talk. I could imagine having students talk with each other. One student could talk with her, 2 students could talk with each other about a response really quickly. That could have the risk of taking too much time. So in this lesson where she's trying to get a lot of concepts across, that might be a less effective use of that. Thinking about our maximizing student involvement. Well, it's taking too much time, but it is involving all the students. You could perhaps have used response cards in this case, so having like an up and down response card. To get students to understand how to do the response cards could be a little bit of effort, and maybe that's not so good. But you can see I've thought of very different ways in which I can maximize student involvement by balancing the number of students involved and the amount of time taken. And I concluded for myself that more choral response would have been effective in helping students do this better, and maybe some physical prompts as well to help students do this better. So those are my thoughts about this. You may have had different ones, but this is giving you an opportunity to think deeply about how teachers are actually applying this. And Ms. Didion is a good teacher. You can see that she's working hard to get students to understand this content. You can also see there are ways that even good teachers like yourself, hopefully, and eventually and definitely with the work on explicit instruction, that you are thinking all the time about your own practice and how you can improve. So that's that.